Hi, Congresswoman Mass. Thank you so much. This is just absolutely awesome. So many of my questions have been answered and asked. You know, I almost sat down because I'm full. But one thing I'd like to find out is in what way can we keep track of what's going on? Is there a website? Are there, I know there are town hall meetings like this, and I know there are different things we can do, but how can we keep track or keep ahead of all of the bills that are being passed that we don't know about, things that are signed that we don't hear about every day, that are not in the, as people not here will call, fake news? So how can we keep track of, so that we can be ahead of knowing what we can do to help? And how can we help? How can I personally, and I'm sure many people here, I have to help in some way with the homeless situation?
Okay.
Hi, that was my 12-year-old. Politics has taken up our entire household for the last 18 months. And it did start with a Sea Change meeting that you spoke at. So,
thank you.
Someone else brought up gun control. That is obviously a big issue. A lot of gun violence prevention activists got a lot of the Southern California Democrats elected. It was the footwork of a lot of moms. So I know you're going to address that, but I also want to bring up two human rights issues. One is domestic and one is international. The domestic is, what are you going to do about the EPA and all of the rollbacks that are slowly killing our children and specifically our communities of color, number one. And number two, what do you plan to do about Yemen? And third, I just want to talk about getting money out of politics, because a lot of this would be not even discussed if we got money out of politics.
Okay. So I took 20 this time because I know I have a hard out at 2, and I wanted to get as many as possible. Okay, so let me go through that, and then my staff has been working quickly about the bills. It was kind of funny that one of the last persons that asked, how do we keep on track of all the bills? You can see I struggle myself. You're asking me about bills, I don't know, and especially if you give the bill number, because you can only imagine the tens of thousands of numbers that go through. So the Water Act, I am a co-sponsor on. I am a co-sponsor on Medicare for All. The resolution about child safety is stalled in the Senate. And then the head of the VA was confirmed at the end of July, and there hasn't been any other activity. So I cannot even imagine an intervention that I would support, meaning a war. That was one of the first questions, wagging the dog, which I do worry about him doing, because he always tries to divert things. Like the day after the election when he lost, he fired Sessions so he could change the news cycle. We all knew he was going to fire Sessions, but he took the day after. The national parks we really are going to have to struggle with, because I believe they're trying to go after public lands, period. And I think that they're starting with Native Americans. You know, the thing about him building the wall, I think is kind of funny, because, you know, a good part of the land is private land. And then there's a lot of the land that are Native American reservations, and I really believe that if left alone, if we hadn't won the House, I believe they would try to open up some of the treaties that we've had with Native Americans for the last 100+ years. I don't have any problem standing up and saying it's lies. I get tired of all of this mushy language that people use. I think we need to just call it out. The birth control mandate is just, you know, egregious. And it just to make sure everybody understands that means that an insurance policy should cover birth control. That should not be an option. There's never any problem covering Viagra, but there's a problem covering birth control. Do I support Medicare for All? Well, I already told you I'm a co-sponsor, but I believe, you know, I spent many years working in healthcare. I used to work at County Hospital. I've seen people die because they did not have health insurance. I believe that this is the richest country in the history of the world, and healthcare, all of it, All of it should be a right, period. I responded to Green New Deal. I really just heard about Green New Deal the other day when Alexandria stood up and mentioned it in caucus. So I will get back to you on Green New Deal. Bernie's ideas, yeah, I mean, I support a lot of Bernie's ideas, and I think you're going to see a lot of it in the form of legislation. Now, you know, again, whether that legislation will make it all the way through, and somebody did ask that before, how are we going to deal with the Senate? So, you know, obviously we'll be able to get a lot of things passed from the House, and we will have to struggle in the Senate. It doesn't mean, though, that it can't pass. For example, immigration reform. If you remember, there was a bill that passed out of the Senate. Now, it wasn't immigration reform that we want, but it was decent. It was decent enough to be passed. But the Republicans wouldn't bring it up in the House. So that's an example. Criminal justice reform, there are some things that can get done. Again, we only got 1/3 of the way there. We have 2/3 more to go, which is the Senate and the White House, but we will be able to get some things done. The PAYGO, I think I mentioned before, I do not support PAYGO. I would like to see PAYGO eliminated. The military budget, you know what, the thing that kills me about the military budget, how is it that we put so much money into the military and veterans qualify for public assistance? How does that work? And not just veterans, active soldiers qualify for public assistance. So I absolutely believe that we should cut the defense budget, but that part of the defense budget and the veterans part, I don't think we should cut. You know, there's all kinds of weapons and stuff that the military doesn't even want that is in there. I think a lot of the military budget needs to be repurposed. Another crime in this country is the suicide rate of veterans. So I wouldn't want to just wholesalely cut things. I would want to repurpose it away from war and toward taking care of the soldiers that should have never been fighting in the first place. So the question was asked about gerrymandering. You all can participate now, because in the next year, you know, in California, we have the voting, the redistricting commission. And you can apply to be on the redistricting commission. And so you should think about that. You can Google California Redistricting Commission and see if there is a, you know, if you could put your name in the hopper. The commissioners are chosen by lottery, so everybody has a chance. So it is something we can directly get involved in. We are lucky in California, though. We don't go through some of the things they go through in the other states, but there is a way for you to be involved. In terms of standardizing disaster, you know this guy. Did you hear this guy? When he came back from Puerto Rico, announced that he had talked to the president of Puerto Rico? It's like, dude, you're the president of Puerto Rico. He said that. You know, you do have to laugh. You do, otherwise you cry. Because of the embarrassment to our country. I do think you will see Russia held far more accountable under this Congress. So HR 1, I think well, how would we get? I think I answered that in terms of, yes, we will struggle with parts of HR 1 in the Senate, but I do think there are parts that we might be able to get passed. Gun control, accept my apology for not mentioning gun control, because it obviously is going to be front and center on our agenda. You will see us do that right away. My good friend Larry asked me about a uniform way for voting. Sure we can. You know, I have to tell you though, we got to figure out, I mean, I thought that we should all be able to figure out how to vote, and then I didn't realize about the hacking and all that stuff that came up in the presidential election. But you can't tell me that we can't figure out a way. I mean, when I was over in Zimbabwe, I was really impressed. First of all, they had an 85% turnout in their voting. When I went to Kenya last year, the way they voted is that you went into the polling place, you had to show an ID, you had to use your thumbprint. Every single polling place had an iPad. And on that iPad, your picture popped up. Now that's in Kenya, okay? I'm in the country in Kenya and everybody's got an iPad. You know, let's see, the Republicans are united on stuff. No, they're not. I mean, you know, they are sometimes, but savor in our victory for a while, because we did win. You know, I mean, we turned Orange County blue. We turned Orange County blue, something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. And then the sanctuary state issue, you know, I mean, I think it's, first of all, I really think we need to deal with the root causes as to why people leave. And when it comes to Central America, we need to be accountable for our involvement in their problems. And so I do think we should be a state that welcomes immigrants, but I don't think any of those people on that caravan want to be on that caravan. They would like to be at home like everybody else in the safety of their community, and I think we need to contribute to that. No, what he said is that he was going to cut foreign aid, you know, which is the exact opposite of what we need to do. And I do not accept that supporting choice is supporting the killing and murdering of children, and I absolutely do not believe in the statistic that 60% of the children are African American, so there's that. And then, where's the young man who said he was 12? Where is he? Where are you? Oh, yeah, I see you there. Good. I want you to know that that's exactly how I got involved, right around your age. And so I'm very glad to know that you're in politics, and I hope you stay that way. And I want you to know that I think that it is unconscionable that we even have private prisons. Period. 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 And you know that President Obama pulled us out of private prisons, and then it was one of the first things that 45 did. You know, they gave him $500,000 toward his inauguration, and they put another $500,000 into an independent expenditure campaign to help him get elected. And then, oh, coincidence, all of a sudden now we're going to use the private prisons for immigrants. And then the EPA, protecting the EPA in Yemen. Yemen is a real issue that we're going to have to deal with, and especially when it comes to Saudi. And now there might be an opening because of their atrocious murder of the journalists, that there might be an opportunity to cut some resources to Yemen. I mean, you know, all those children that were killed on that school bus, those were our bombs that killed those children. And then the young woman that asked, what can you do around homelessness? There's something very specific you can do around homelessness. And I say this every time. You know, there is going to be homeless housing that is going to need to be built in our community. And I know, and a couple of you got back to me afterwards talking about the real problems with homeless individuals and the challenges that neighborhoods have. And believe me, I don't dismiss that in any way, shape, or form. But one thing that all of us can do is we can help with the siting of the homeless housing, because one of the first things that people did after the ballot measures passed was threaten to sue. So which way do you want it to be? Do you want us to deal with the homeless situation or not? The homeless folks have to be housed somewhere. So hopefully we will be more enlightened in that. So why don't we take the next 20, and I think that will probably wrap us up.
Hi, Karen Bass. First of all, congratulations on the Blue Wave.
Yes!
I have 3 questions. Hopefully we can get this done. My daughter, when I take her to school, she says, Mom, she's 13 years old. She says, Mom, we have a psychopath in the White House. So my question is, can we get a firm evaluation on Trump's mental stability? There is a clearly a problem with Trump dictating his own medical assessment. Is there any way that we can get rid of clearance from Jared and Ivanka? And how can we hold the Senate accountable for their actions by lying, by just looking the other way? They're not doing their job. So how can we do that?
Hi, Congressman Bass. First of all, I just want to thank you for the wonderful work you've been doing. And I just want to say that I always remember that one of the last things and the first thing when he left, the first thing and the last thing when President Obama came into office, he said, "This was never about me, it was always about you." And look at this. I mean, this is diversity. This is community, and I really appreciate the fact that your transferable skills as an organizer has really brought that. I get educated when I come to these meetings, and I really thank you for that. Thank you. The other area that I'm really interested in, because I work in the area of career development and all of that, we have really big issues right now. When we talk about education, we always talk about the kids, the younger people getting educated. But we don't talk enough about the people in their mid-40s and 50s and 60s, because people have to work a lot longer than they ever thought they would have to. And if they do not get retrained in certain areas, they have no opportunities in order to get new jobs that are out there. And this is where I'm really thinking about the intergenerational opportunities that are out there, where there's a fit for people whatever ages, because it's really healthy for younger people and older people to work together. So I just want to throw that out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is my first town hall I've ever been to. First time I voted was in the 2016 election, so obviously that was quite the initiation for me. Originally I was going to come up here and ask about, the possibility of Speaker Pelosi, but I've been moved by your comments on that, so I'll be asking about something else. I wanted to know about the campaign finance problems that we have. Obviously it's all well and good that you support HR 1. But the problem is that with the Supreme Court in the state that it is, it's not going to allow that to pass. So what I would like to ask you to do is throw your weight around and start getting, start talking about a constitutional amendment. Amend the Constitution to ban corporations from buying our politicians. I would also hope that you join with the Justice Democrats and stop accepting campaign money from these same corporations.
Hello, wonderful Congresswoman Karen Bass. I'm an Iranian American who lives here for more than 30 years. Thank you so much for your great services, and thank you so much for having this event in here. I feel like I'm at home. You next to Cyrus Charter of Human Rights, that's classy. Thank you so much. I would like to mention our anxiety, Iranian anxiety, again after the big revolution and war and everything. We all pull ourselves out of those trauma. And now we have another anxiety that Trump goes to UN and say untrue things. Iran has never started a bomb or a war in any country and has helped a lot of other countries. So I just wanted to hear your advices, your thoughts about all these anxiety that he causes in our lives. We are working hard here. We are not terrorists, and it's just 30 years back again, we're into great anxiety by untrue and lies, things that he start feeding people. Thank you.
Hello. I would like to ask you, first I want to thank you for helping, as a voting member of the Recording Academy, I want to thank you for helping pass the Music Modernization Act this year. And believe it or not, Congress approved it 415 to nothing. And it gives rights to songwriters and music creators, and the average person might not know what's going on, but I want to thank you for your part in passing that.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Secondly, I'm really concerned about the amount of conservative judges that are being put on the court.
Yes.
As a black man, I've never been arrested. I've been stopped by the police at least 60 times. Never been arrested. Never. But this thing that Jeff Sessions just did on his way out the door, and consent decrees, it really concerns me. And I'm just asking you, can you talk me off the ledge?
Hi, Congresswoman. Thank you very much for being with us today. I have two comments. One is more general and the other is more specific. Let me start by the general comment. I'm very much concerned about what we humans do with our environment. Not active, we should be much more active for protecting our environment for our children. Then, can a little bit more specific, there is new bill HR 392. I think you are co-sponsor for that bill.
What is it?
It's for removing the country cap for U.S. green cards.
Oh.
So that's, to me, one of the things that I love about our nation is the diversity that I see. Look, we see different people from different places all over the world. So the major, the intent behind putting these country caps over the U.S. new green cards is to keep diversity about the nation. Mm-hmm. I think by removing that country cap, we will lose that. I think it's a major threat towards the diversity in our nation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Go ahead. Over here. Can we? Can,
Yes, in your slideshow on HR1, education was mentioned, but you haven't said much about it. And I'd particularly like to ask about your thoughts on privatization of education. It's kind of the same issue that we have with privatization of jails. And I'm not personally so much opposed to privatization, but I'm opposed to unregulated privatization, which is what our education secretary seems to want.
thank you.
Hello, Congresswoman. I spent the better part of the last few months campaigning and canvassing for Democrats across the political spectrum, mainly in Orange County, but also in Lancaster and Palmdale. And I'm concerned, I know you've already spoken about Nancy Pelosi, but I'm concerned that some of that progress that we've made in districts that have a lot of Republicans could see some backlash. Her polling is in the minus mid-20s.
Who did you say, Katie Porter?
Katie Porter, yeah, along with Gil Cisneros. And so my question to you is, will you please run for speaker? We could really use someone who's qualified, who's obviously popular, and has the experience. So will you please consider that?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for hosting. I don't usually, I come and listen. I don't usually come and talk, but I'm here because I think we all believe the country's at a crucial moment. You've just won the House, right? It is just the House. But what you've got to do is put together a convincing policy agenda for 2020. I mean, that's your job for the next 2 years, is show the country. Show the country that the Democrats actually are going to be there for people. And I also was canvassing in Lancaster. I talked to a lot of skeptical voters. They don't believe in the Democrats right now. I mean, and so what you've got to do is put forth a policy agenda that's convincing. And the other reason I came is, I'm sorry to talk about Nancy Pelosi again, but the proposals for House rules that they put up, you're probably familiar with it. I'm surprised nobody else has talked about it. But apparently one of Nancy Pelosi's ideas was to put in place a super majority requirement for raising taxes on the bottom 80%. And my jaw dropped. Because, you know, we're talking about things like Medicare for all. Yeah, we might need to raise taxes a little bit on people, but if you give them free health care, you know, that makes sense. So I am worried that Nancy Pelosi just isn't in the right place. Fine, make her speaker, but how are you going to let her know that you're speaker, but you're speaker because you're doing what we want you to do, not what you want to do? Because I don't think she's got her head in the right place with PAYGO and things like that. Taxes are the Republican agenda. The government is not a household. I'm an economist, PhD from UCLA. The government is not a household, right? You can't just keep holding back Democratic policies so that the Republicans can pass tax cuts, because guess what? The money actually is there. So basically, when these people come and tell you we can't do that, and then there are a lot of Democrats who are going to tell you that too, because we don't have the money.
Oh no,
Just-
no, we have enough money. We
Okay,
have
so just what I'm asking you to do is, yes, you have Speaker Pelosi, but find a way to make her support the right policies, because we need them in the next 2 years.
I just wanted to say how happy I am that you're representing us and how hopeful I am about the blue wave. But one thing that I've noticed as I scanned the political campaigns leading up to this, so few people are talking about education. And education, for me, is the foundation of a functional society. In the state of California, we have about 70% of kids in third grade are way behind grade level in literacy. Yet we have the private prisons who project 10 years ahead how many beds they're going to need to house these illiterate kids. We also have the situation of special education. Special education kids comprise about 12 to 13% nationally of our school population, but 80% of those kids with the right supports can perform at the same grade level as our neurotypical peers. In the federal law, we have the IDEA Act, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, that mandates all local educational agencies give kids who are found to have a disability that impacts their learning services so that they can rise up to the level of their neurotypical peers. However, that act is a very underfunded mandate, and all states don't get the funding from the federal government to support the very expensive services that these kids require. And I could go on about disproportionality, the opportunity. So what can we do, or what can you do to really give all kids, all different kinds of needs, better access to education?
Thank you. I'm only going to be able to take a few more because it's 2, I need to leave, and I want to answer all of these that are up. Go ahead.
Hello, Congressmember. 2 questions. One, the Equal Rights Amendment had a timeline passed on it, but it came close to the recommended number of votes to pass constitutional muster. Is it time to revive our push for the Equal Rights Amendment? Yes. And 2, last month or so before the election, the administration began to make noise about rulings Department of Education, Department of Labor, and Department of Health and Human Services to create an identification around gender that would essentially erase transgender people, their access to rights and education as children, access to equality in the workplace, and also very disturbingly access to general health care, and penalizing healthcare providers that refuse to go along with the new definitions, which are not based on science. Can you please address that?
Good afternoon. Thanks, Congresswoman Bass. Mine is more for piggyback on some of the comments. One of the people had asked, what can we do as far as getting the right information out so that everyone will know what's happening. And it's going to be a pet peeve, and I'll be fine. My thing is the media. Even though you have CNN, MSNBC, et al., they all met with Donald Trump when he first became president-elect. They met with him for 2 hours or more off the record, and I believe it was what he's going to promise them. I get tired of looking at the news media for a whole hour, all day, and all they do is talk about the whole time with different people, one tweet. So during the 60s and 70s, we had Free Press, we had Radio Free Europe, who gave the people in the trenches the information. So I would like to know what we can do in order in community. We can't eat the whole elephant, but different people can eat part of it and then regurgitate it. It's so nasty, isn't it?
Thank you.
We can view it for it. But how we can get it out to, because I mean, there are all of us that are on fire. I am from my community, and there are certain things that they may not know, and you know how I feel about the youth. So for me, what we can do now to go into 2020 to educate the youth from high school and above to know how to vote, to know what they voted for. Because I think I told you the one time when I had gone for voting, and the lady was filling out the card as if she was taking a test. She was just penciling everything in. I said, no, honey, you put inside of there and you punch the hole. She didn't know that. Okay. But we've busy getting them to register, but we don't teach. So I would like for us to figure out how we can do that.
Thank you. So, what's going on? Okay. The reason why I have to go is because there's actually another town hall a few minutes away that I have to get to. So, can I ask, if you don't have a question, if you have a question, can you be very, very brief, and in that way, because I hate to not call on everybody, and let me just ask people to recognize Commissioner Mike Davis, Public Works Commissioner of the City of Los Angeles. Okay, rapid fire. He's not your president. Got it.
Thank you for conducting this town hall meeting, and thank you for your service to our district. Would you be willing to, once you go back to Washington, you say you have a November 28th vote to determine who will be the next, would you be able to push Barbara Lee to challenge Nancy Pelosi? Because Nancy Pelosi is a neoliberal, and Barbara Lee has more integrity to take her on.
Okay.
Because you need a House that's got to be strong against her.
I got you.
She's a perfect choice.
I'll answer you.
Hi, Congresswoman, I'm Karen Beth. My name is Yongping Zhou. I was referred by the Sherry Chen. You had helped him 3 years ago for his falsified espionage case, and she gave me the letter referring. I have something really wrong, and you mentioned the criminal justice reform. I have something case. 2 years ago, I went to your office to file my complaint. That's about Federal Chief Agent Michael Walsh obstruction of justice in my case from 2008 to 2015. And Representative Ted Lieu 2016 inquiry, I obtained the critical evidence. Right now, he keeps silence. I please hold my case. I wrote a letter to give the director you this morning.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but let me just say that if it's a specific situation like that, and I don't mean to cut you off, but my staff can help you. But if you wouldn't mind if we could just get to you as soon as we get through the questions, and then they can take personal care. Claudia, I don't know where Claudia is, but oh, okay. So can you guys get him to Claudia? Okay. Thank you very much. Yes.
Hi, I'm Mark Hymax, and I've met you several times, and it was nice to have you. One of the things that we've been working on in California has been getting certified peer specialists. It's codified under the California Welfare and Institutions Code. Governor Brown vetoed the bill at the end of September. Now we need to get that into the California law and probably into federal law. With that, we can bring services to people who are homeless, to people who are in jail, and to people who are into diversion programs.
Okay, thank you.
In order to do that,
thank you.
Okay.
I got you. Thank you.
Hi. Gerrymandering is a problem, voter suppression is a problem, and we lost Stacey Abrams because of it. But Florida, we lost because of ballot machines that should be in a dumpster, and because of sort of like our version of butterfly ballots. So are you committing to the actually voting machines or ballot infrastructure, because let's be honest right here, voters are probably not an isolated cases out there.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hello, I'm a teacher in Mid-City, LA, and I just wanted to come to you today to ask you to help with us with addressing affordable housing in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Measure JJJ,
Yes.
and the city is really not addressing the problem with the TOC and the things that they're doing in the planning department. Thank you so much.
First of all, thank you for being our representative. I really am happy that you're here for us. I have a couple questions around accountability. There seems to be an accountability issue in our government. Obviously, we've got the most corrupt administration in recent memory, but also we've had recently a Supreme Court justice appointed with no due process, or with lots of due process issues. We've also had issues like Al Franken, who was called to resign by his own party, by many members of his own party, with no due process. So I want to know, what are 5 steps that you will commit to taking to investigate and enforce accountability within our government?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lily Larson. I just graduated from Fairfax High School, and I'm really concerned about all the rapid development in my neighborhood of Mid-City. It's causing displacement of residents and homelessness of actually some of my friends. This has inspired me actually to run for CD10 in 2020, but after discovering that my own city and state officials are responsible for promoting this type of development and maybe even accepting money from developers, I ask as a local teen and 5th generation Angelino for your support just to look into this issue, just to ensure that more Angelinos and